Before we start, I'm going to do this one podcast style, so you don't have to look at the screen. You can just press play, listen, and hopefully I'll keep your attention. Today I want to talk about Helen of Troy for obvious reasons. Helen of Troy is one of the most specifically defined characters in all of mythology. She's the daughter of Zeus, the wife of Menelaus. She's taken to Troy by Paris, and her presence alone is enough to unite kings, mobilize armies, burn a city to the ground, and kill thousands of people over the course of 10 years, because she's just that beautiful. And the reason any of it works, the reason the story functions at all, is because Helen is not just pretty, her beauty is supernatural. Her beauty is treated as a force of nature. It's not a vague concept. It defines the character. And that's not my opinion. That's the way Homer wrote her. That's the way Euripides wrote her. And everyone who follows them, they're extremely clear about this. Helen's beauty is not subjective in any way at all. It's not debated. Men who see her all react the same way. It doesn't matter what their allegiance, their allies, their enemies. It doesn't matter if they're strangers. It doesn't matter. The phrase, "the face that launched 1,000 ships," exists for one reason: because of her beauty. Beauty itself is measured against her. There's no surviving ancient description that describes her as plain or relatable. She's beautiful, she's radiant, and immediately recognizable as extraordinary. So when they cast Lupita Nyong'o in that part, it just seemed like another one of those cases where they're sticking it to the audience. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not saying that Lupita Nyong'o is unattractive. I'm sure that there are some people out there that find her very attractive. But Helen's beauty is not subjective. She is objectively beautiful. Beauty can be measured, believe it or not. There is science behind measuring beauty. That type of beauty requires universal appeal. And I just don't think that Lupita Nyong'o has that universal appeal. Again, I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that find her absolutely beautiful. But for the character to work, it needs to be instantly recognizable. And before we continue, can we talk about her name for a second? Lupita Nyong'o. Now, I don't know if anybody else has noticed, but there's this weird trend in Hollywood in the last, 10 years or so, where they take black actors with the most African-sounding names and they really prop them up. If you're an actor and you're black and your name is Jason Williams, you will not get as much attention as you would if your name is Lupita Nyong'o or Gabourey Sidibe or John Boyega or Digimon Hansu. Is it pronounced Digimon? That's how it looks to me. Or Shurigawa. You know, if I was a black actor and I was going to Hollywood and my name was Jason Williams, I would change it to Aragonye Baragonye, because clearly you get more high-profile gigs if your name is vaguely African-sounding. As a matter of fact, the trend took hold so hard that Raven-Symoné, who's been around for as long as any of us can remember, recently decided that we've been pronouncing her name all wrong for her entire career. Her name, according to her, has always been pronounced Raven-Symoné, just to go along with that whole African-sounding name trend. It's ridiculous. But anyway, that's neither here nor there on this topic. I just thought it was an interesting side. But back to Helen. So again, Helen's beauty has to be instantly recognizable to the audience. It's not subjective within the story. It's functionally universal. If her beauty becomes some people see it, some people don't, then the entire myth collapses, the Trojan War doesn't happen, and then we don't have a movie. And of course, race always has to enter the conversation, right? If we don't like a casting choice and that casting happens to be black, well, now we're racist, automatically right out of the gate. No further conversation required. Even though I just spelled it out, Helen is described as universally beautiful, and I would argue that Lupita Nyong'o is not universally beautiful. And none of this says anything about Lupita Nyong'o's talent or worth or value. She's a great actress. It just means that some roles are built around a universal truth. In this case, Helen is universally beautiful. Let me give an example. Let's say that somebody somewhere decided to make a film about Hercules, and they decided to cast Jonah Hill. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not talking about a comedy. Let's say that somebody was making a prestige film about Hercules, and they cast Jonah Hill as is. Didn't make him go through any kind of training regimen, didn't make him do anything. Just threw a toga on him. No transformation, no irony, no commentary. They just throw him on the screen and tell us that it's Hercules. Would they be shocked when audiences rejected it? And the thing is, it's not because Jonah Hill lacks talent. It's because Hercules visually defines physical power. power. His strength is so obvious it requires zero exposition, and Helen works the same way. Hercules is strength so apparent it needs no persuasion. Helen is beauty so apparent it needs no persuasion. In both cases, the audience is not meant to be convinced, it's instantly recognizable. So when filmmakers cast against the defining trait and tell the audience this is perfect, they're telling us how to react to a character instead of casting the character as someone who fits the part. And the audience will instinctively reject that. People are fine with reinterpretations when the core function of the character remains intact, or when the story acknowledges the deviation. What they reject is gaslighting, pretending a contradiction doesn't exist and asking the audience to play along. And in this case, it's already racially charged. They chose a black woman, a very dark-skinned black woman. So if you reject this idea of her playing Helen, well, you're rejecting the idea that she could be beautiful. And if you're rejecting the idea that a dark-skinned black woman could be beautiful, that instantly makes you racist, even though none of those things are factoring in. This is about objective beauty. This is about the character's defining trait. And here's where the double standard kicks in. If Jonah Hill played Hercules, it would be treated as a failure of the craft. Critics would say that the casting contradicts the character. The film would get buried. It would win Razzies. No one would pretend the audience was morally defective for noticing that Jonah Hill doesn't look like Hercules. But Lupita Nyong'o as Helen of Troy, objections to the same kind of mismatch would not be debated on narrative grounds. They would be reframed as racist. The criticisms would be framed as a moral failure on the part of whoever was doing the criticizing. And generally people don't actually dislike race swapping in the abstract. That's a lazy mischaracterization. What people react to is when a defining load-bearing trait is altered or blurred while the story insists that it hasn't changed. Some characters are flexible because their identity is psychological or situational. Others are structural. Race only becomes part of the argument when the defining trait is visual and immediate, and the casting undermines that trait without the script acknowledging it. At that point, the audience isn't being asked to suspend disbelief, they're being asked to override perception. People are actually very tolerant of reinterpretation. What they reject is being told what they're seeing doesn't matter. And there's been this huge trend in Hollywood since 2020. I've mentioned it in a few of my other videos. Black women are prioritized in almost every film. They say they want diversity, but to them diversity means put a chick in it, make her black, and sometimes gay. But I think the tragedy here is Lupita Nyong'o herself. She's got to be seeing all the backlash online. And here's the thing about that. People that find her to be beautiful are going to reevaluate that opinion, because now they're being told that she's not only beautiful, she's the most beautiful. That's going to make you look sideways at anybody. People that are neutral on her are going to hear that she's playing the most beautiful woman in history. All of a sudden, they're not going to be neutral. They're going to see her as a little less. And people that see her as unattractive, this is going to just put them over the edge. So by putting her in this role, the unintended consequence is pure judgment, superficial judgment at that. And no, those things shouldn't matter, but I'm human, you're human, she's human. And if enough people on the internet explode and start calling her ugly because she was cast as the most beautiful woman in the world, well, those are the consequences. And that sort of goes to the bigger picture. As I just mentioned, there's a trend in Hollywood going back to around, May 2020, where all of a sudden black characters have all been lifted to this next level. They're all perfect in some way. They have, purest intentions, 100% integrity. They're the smartest, the brightest. They're usually scientists. And they repeatedly do this trope again and again and again and again. Well, you know what? Unfortunately, that will eventually build resentment. That's the unintended consequence. And the resentment starts out directed at the casting directors, but eventually you see a black face in a historically white role and you start to connect dots. So now instead of being mad at the casting directors, the common man is mad at black people. And that's not fucking fair. It's in that way that Hollywood is actually hurting the very people they claim to want to help. So Christopher Nolan is making the Odyssey, and it's going to have Zendaya, and it's going to have Lupita Nyong'o, and I don't even know who else is going to be in there. I think Matt Damon's going to be in there, and you know what? Just for the sake of fairness, I should mention I hate Matt Damon too. Terrible actor. But somehow me hating Matt Damon is going to be less offensive than me not wanting Lupita Nyong'o to play Helen, right? But here's the obvious outcome. This movie's going to come out. It's going to be praised by critics. It's going to be hated by audiences. Audiences are going to be accused of review bombing, and then the movie's going to win Oscars, including Best Whatever Actress for Lupita Nyong'o. It's the same cycle. We've seen it over and over and over again, and at some point it has to stop. These casting decisions are made for a handful of people on Twitter who don't go see movies anyway. So who would I choose? That's easy. Maria Menounos. She's Greek, she's beautiful, and no, not everybody's going to agree that she's the most beautiful woman in the world, but the idea is to not break immersion. It would be easy to sell her in that role. It would be much easier to sell her in that role than Lupita Nyong'o. Anyway, that's it. Am I right? Am I wrong? Let me know all the reasons I'm an idiot in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, click notifications, and I will see you next time.